Halo Infinite's shop system isn't very good, but of course you probably already knew that. For those of you that watch my channel regularly, you'll know I speak about the shop a lot. In fact, I speak about it on a weekly basis, and when there was daily bundles, I used to cover it every single day. But even though I've been speaking about this system for quite a long time, I've never really covered it in depth, which brings us to today. I'll be starting a 3-part series covering the main issues with the shop, with each episode focusing on a different aspect. I'll be going over the overall problems and also ways that I believe they can be fixed. This first chapter of this series will be going over the pricing of items, the inconsistencies, and ways that these can be dealt with in an efficient way. Of course, if you do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new here. It really does help the channel out and I really do appreciate it. But without wasting any more of your time, let's jump straight in. The pricing of items in Halo Infinite have been very inconsistent since day one. Sometimes you'll get bundles that contain very similar items and a very similar quantity of items, yet the prices seem to be very different to one another. In some extreme instances, you will even get bundles that actually contain less than another, even though they're both very similar, yet for some reason cost the same price if not more. One of the best examples of this are the Point Bombardment and Liberty Clad bundles. Now Point Bombardment is an epic bundle that cost 700 credits. It gave you the Point Bombardment coating for the Eagle Strike Core, as well as every single vehicle. And whether or not you like this bundle, whether or not you like the coating, overall I think the value was okay. But then Liberty Clad cost the same price, but with only a fraction of these items. You got the coating for the Armor Core, but then you only received it for 3 vehicles, the Warthog, the Rocket Hog, and the Razorback. You could argue this coating might be nicer, but does that necessarily mean it's worth more, especially this much more? Now the prime difference here is that one of these bundles is a legendary. Rarity in Halo Infinite really doesn't mean a thing, it's more so just an excuse so 343 can price items differently. Drawing comparison to Halo 5, which was of course the last Halo game, rarity in that actually had some form of meaning. Because that game had rec packs, rarity determined the likelihood that you would get one of those items, a legendary of course being much more unlikely, whereas something like a common or a rare being easy to acquire. But in Halo Infinite, this doesn't really make any sense. Even comparing it to another live service title like Fortnite, which has a very similar shop system, in Fortnite the rarity does have some form of meaning. It more so determines the likelihood that those items will reappear in the shop. Or sometimes the higher rarity items are genuinely just the better ones. They might have something extra to offer, like they might be customizable. Even with unlocks in this game, the rarity system still makes absolutely no sense. If you look at the campaign and the armor coatings that were available, some of them are rare, some of them are epic, and I believe one of them is legendary, even though they're all acquired in the exact same way. You just go around the map finding armor lockers, which are marked on your map as soon as you capture a fob anyway. So I don't understand why there's a rarity there, because it's not like any of these are rarer than the other, bar one, which is a wasp skin that isn't marked on the map. Yet for some reason, that one isn't a legendary, even though it's technically the hardest one to find. Now since there isn't really any repeats on the shop in the same way that there is in other live service titles, rarity makes even less sense here. That isn't to say there is no repeats on Halo Infinite shop, but it's sort of weird in how it works. Fortnite of course rotates every single day and you're not guaranteed to see a legendary at all on any of those given days. But on Halo, there's pretty much a legendary bundle every single week. Sometimes it's an old one, sometimes it's a new one. In fact, the vast majority of bundles on the game are legendary or epic. So it just feels like overall the rarity system is a poor excuse to determine prices for certain items. Other than that, it really doesn't have any meaning. There is a few examples where it makes a bit more sense. If you look at the emblems you acquire from ranked playlists for getting to a certain rank, the lower ones are common, with the higher ones up, the higher ranks being higher rarities, and this makes sense. I can understand why the lower ones would be common, because they're easier to acquire, with some of the higher divisions obviously being much more of a challenge to get to. Therefore, those emblems are a higher rarity, and that makes sense. But linking this back to pricing, there is plenty of other bundles that show a huge inconsistency. The most recognisable ones would of course be armor sets. Now at the beginning of the game's lifespan, all the armor sets cost 2,000 credits, which was an extremely high amount. It's not like you're getting a whole new core out of this, you're just getting a few armor attachments, so the 2,000 credit price point was not fair in the slightest. Later on, this was then lowered to 1,200, they even brought some old bundles back with a reduced price. And personally, I think this was a much fairer price point. Season 2 started, and again a lot of these bundles cost that same amount. But things very quickly took a turn for the worst, and we had a couple of bundles that were just way more expensive for no reason. There was the ULLR set, which cost 1,600, and even the Lead Belcher one, which was for the Eagle Strike Core, that cost 1,700. When Lead Belcher had released and players saw that the prices were going up even more, Sketch actually responded to some of the criticism. He said that this week is higher due to quantity and rarity of the items in the bundle, not a universal price hike. Seems like this doesn't meet expectations for many and is part of the team's experimenting and learning. Note that much of the shop feedback will take much more time to implement. There's definitely a few things to pick apart here. Of course, this quote was said when Lead Belcher had actually released, so this was a while ago now. I find it very interesting that this was part of the supposed experimentation process, considering people were quite happy with a lot of the 1,200 price points, so why would they make it more expensive? And saying that it was due to rarity and the quantity also didn't make sense. The Sealock set, which had released during the same season, was 1,200 and contained the exact same amount of items, so the quantity part is clearly just not true. And as for rarity, there's been plenty of other legendary bundles that were 1,200. Of course, some of those did release at 2k, but they were then reduced, so why would they think it was okay to increase the price of this bundle? It really didn't make any sense at all. Sketch was then called out on this when people obviously complained about the rarity not really meaning anything, and he had this to say. I admit rarity is the wrong word, and while it's an internal designation, my referring to it publicly understandably has driven confusion and feedback. There is still some subjectivity involved, and not all content items have the same cost of production. So what we have to learn from this is the fact that 343 increased the prices of some bundles because they supposedly took more time to develop and had a higher production cost. The main problem I have here is that doesn't really feel like a fair reason to increase the price. At the end of the day, the people that designed that armor, the people that 3D modeled and developed that armor, they're not the ones that are getting the money from it every time someone purchases it on the shop. I understand this would be so 343 can recoup those development costs, but wouldn't you want the bundle to be of a fairer price so that more people have the opportunity to buy it? Because overall you're then going to make more money. So this does seem like another poor excuse. Of course, none of this is Sketch's fault. He's not the one that determines the prices, so I'm not mad at him about this. But the wording and reasoning doesn't seem to make any sense. Now this all circles back to our original point of inconsistencies. We've gone over quite a few different bundles and how the pricing of them all is really inconsistent. Bundles will contain the same amount of items and cost different amounts for seemingly no genuine reason. If they wanted to increase the price of bundles, then add more to it, give it more value and more of a reason to purchase this one. If Lead Belcher contained more than an average armor set, I'd have no issue with it costing more. Same with ULLR, but these bundles just didn't contain more, therefore the price just didn't seem fair. It's also funny how with some weapon coatings, like right now the Strong Iris bundle is on the shop, this costs 400 credits and gives you a bunch of weapon coatings. But then they'll sell individual weapon coatings for 300 credits each. And it just really makes you question what 343 are trying to accomplish with the shop system, with the pricing. Yes, a lot of the time these 300 credit ones are much better than the average coatings, but do they really deserve being that price? 343 explained before Infinite come out, they went with a coating system because it was supposed to be easier for them to develop, so there should be no logical reason for the individual weapon coatings to not be on every single gun. I would rather pay 800 credits and get them, or get one for every weapon in a bundle rather than pay 300 for one, if that makes sense. I mean, Fortnite's accomplished this. It sells its regular weapon wraps for 300 V-Bucks, and you get it for every weapon and some vehicles, and then you can also buy animated ones for like 500 V-Bucks. The higher price point makes sense on them because they genuinely really stand out. So 343 really needs to work on ways to make the pricing seem more fair. This could be including more in bundles or just more so consistently making bundles the same prices. One thing that I believe would really help with the consistency of the prices is allowing players to buy individual items out of the bundles, and this is something that people have wanted since the game launched. We have had a few individual items released on the shop before. I've mentioned how there's individual weapon coatings, and we even had something like the Firefall helmet, but the prices of these tend to be extremely unfair. and they're handled in a very poor way. Firefall didn't even come with the attachment that it is supposed to have with it, and that attachment still hasn't released, so I don't know if we're ever even going to see that. At least they did sort of correct this mistake when they brought out the Cambion helmet. That one came with all 3 of its attachments, and I do believe that was a bit better in terms of value. But that isn't the way I want to see individual items implemented. I don't want bundles to be picked apart so 343 can just pick one at random to sell on the shop. I want to be able to scroll through a bundle, look at an item in that bundle that I like, and then purchase it. Using another live service title as an example, let's look at Fall Guys. Now right now you can get like Terry Bogard on the shop. If you were to click on him, you could get the whole set for 800 Starbucks or Showbucks, whatever they're called. But if you wanted, you could just buy the lower or upper half. The upper half costing 700 and the lower half costing 500. Now if you were to buy these individually, it's going to cost you a lot more, but if you were to buy the set, then you're saving Showbucks. Of course, this is designed intentionally to make people want the set, so they'll spend technically a little bit more rather than buy the individual pieces. It's very rare that anybody would buy the individual pieces, but at least it gives players that option if they don't necessarily want the whole set. A big problem people have with Halo Infinite shop is the fact that a lot of the bundles, there'll only be like one item that players actually care about, but if they want that, they have to buy the entire thing. So, for a quick example, let's take a look at the Yakuza armor set, which is the one that's on the shop right now. This bundle contains 13 items, granted like 4 of these are the same emblem, but like let's say I just wanted the helmet. This bundle costs 1,200. What if the helmet comes with its attachment for 500 credits? This would seem like a pretty reasonable price for the helmet with its attachment. Of course, you'd get nothing else with it. If for 500, I could click on this bundle, click on the helmet and just purchase it on its own. Of course, it would have to come with its attachment. It would be very scummy if they sold that separately, but let's say that costs 500. Then the coating in this bundle could cost 200. The chest piece could also cost 200 or 300. And then if the shoulder pads cost 200 for both of them, and so do the gloves and knee pads, they could cost 200 each. Maybe the stance and the emblem could cost 100 each. If you were to buy all of those on their own, this would set you back 1,800 credits, which costs more than the average price of the bundle. That way a bundle would seem like a better deal, but at least players have the option to just buy the one thing that they want. I might look at this bundle and I might just want the coating, or I might just want the shoulder pads. Give players that option and I guarantee people would buy more from the shop because then they can just get the things that they want. It might initially seem like 343 would make less money from this because people could just buy one item and spend less credits overall, but at the same time, if more people are buying those items, they're going to make more money. We have had a few examples of individual things on the shop that are priced relatively fairly. Looking again at the shop right now, the Desert Gold Visor for 200 I don't necessarily think is a terrible price, and also the Hope's Vice gloves. They do come with an emblem as well, so they are technically a bundle, but 200 for gloves, again, is relatively fair. So if 343 wants to fix the shop, they really need to look into fixing some of these problems. And a lot of them, it seems like the solution is relatively easy. I mean, again, just making the prices more consistently. Bundles should all cost the same amount, unless they contain more or less. The Locust armor set cost 1,100 and it contained a bit less, so to compensate it was a little bit cheaper, and that was fine. If they want to charge more, that bundle should come with more to make it seem like it's worth that value. If Lead Belcher came with a piece of armor for every single region, if it also came with gloves and knee pads and utility, I mean, I know it comes with some of those things, but if it came with something for every region, then a stance and a coating and a visor, like, I wouldn't mind that price point because it feels worth it because it contains much more. But then if I also had the option to just buy something out of it individually, if I could just get the helmet with its attachment for 500 to 600 credits, that'd be fine. But anyway, I believe that is everything I need to say in this video. We've gone over the inconsistencies of the shop and the ways that I believe it can be solved, and also the ways that I think 343 can sell individual items for players and make it seem reasonably fair, while also making bundles seem like a better deal. For the next part of this series, we will be going over the currency, we'll be talking about credits, and ways that 343 can make the credits feel fairer overall. I'm not entirely sure when I'll get this one out, but definitely stay tuned for that one. Leave notifications on, if you are looking forward to it. But anyway, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new here. As I said at the beginning of the video, it really helps the channel out and I really do appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will catch you all in the next one.